remember the problem with paper ballots back in 2000, Bush-Gore, and there have been complaints about electronic voting systems going back to 2004. What is the actual solution here?
Yeah, in fact, the problems in the 2000 election with the hanging chads that you mentioned in Florida led to us to move to electronic systems. And I think the answer is really what we need. Electronic systems, whether they're scanners that read paper ballots or they're touchscreen machines, have advantages, but we need paper backup so that we can ensure that what the software is telling us is accurate.
There are currently 21 states that have electronic voting systems and 5 states that have electronic voting systems with no paper trail at all. New Jersey, Delaware, South Carolina, Georgia, and Louisiana. Would you say that these states are the most at risk for being hacked? Well,
one thing to keep in mind is that there are a number of aspects to our elections. So there are registration databases that tell us who can vote. There are electronic poll books that are used in many places that allow people to sign in so that they can vote. Those are also things that we have to worry about when we're talking about cyber attacks. When it comes to the voting machines themselves, and as I know what a lot of people are focused on, and ensuring they're secure, it's not that a paperless system is necessarily easier to hack, right? Even if you're filling out a paper ballot, as we do in about 2/3 of the country, and then have that scanned in by a computer, that computer could be hacked too. But the thing that I'm worried about in the 5 states that are all paperless, and then there are another 8 that much of the state might be paperless, for instance, Pennsylvania, is that there's no way to check afterwards with something that's independent of the software to make sure that the totals are accurate. And that's a great concern, and why many people who work in this space, and that includes the Department of Homeland Security and others, have recommended that these systems be replaced.
Now, I know we're all focused on the tally because, you know, we want to know if the results could have been altered. There is no evidence that we've heard that the results in the 2016 presidential election would be different if the election had not been compromised. But do you buy that? Do we know for certain that the results, you know, wouldn't have been different?
Well, so here's the issue, and the discussion around the hacking and the interference in the 2016 election can get a little bit confused. I should emphasize that all of the attacks on the election infrastructure that we know about were against things like the registration databases, attempts to get into election officials' emails, things like that. I'm not aware of any, I don't think there's any public record of any attempt to get into the voting machines themselves. No evidence of any altering of vote totals. But something that's really critical is part of the effort of the Russians in the 2016 election, and frankly in attacks and interference in elections around the world, has been to discredit the whole idea of democracy and trust in democracy, and I think we're going to be seeing more of that. So it does really worry me that in 2018, 2020, with social media propaganda and other things, if there are doubts cast on the outcome of the election, particularly in these states where they don't have paper backup and they're not checking the paper, that you really are leading to potentially just a crisis in the confidence in the electoral system in the United States, and that's really dangerous.
Well, given that Congress just voted down a measure that would have provided additional funding for securing the vote, how confident are you about these elections that are, you know, just over 100 days away?
Well, I think a key thing, first of all, Congress did provide about $380 million a few months ago for upgrading election infrastructure. I think the key thing for us to focus on for the next few months is that if there is a successful breach of systems, and I think we have to act under the assumption that if there is an antagonistic nation state working against us, that's a real possibility, that we can make sure that people can still vote and that their votes are counted.